have five-time world champion Craig Alexander with us again tonight. We run a session. When was it, Craig? A few months ago now, when we talked about training preparation for the big day at Club Champs. And it was a lot of really, really, really good tips about how to prepare yourself best for the race. I love the conversation, and I'm really, really excited about tonight. I think we're going to unpack a lot of you, I guess, experience and advice that can, be shared amongst this group. And I think what I'd love to begin with to explain a bit the format of tonight is we're going to look at a timeline of 5 p.m. on a Friday to basically you sort of like 5 p.m. on a Saturday. So there's 24 hours when you're going to have to basically get ready for your race, and then sort of recover after the race. What does that look like in I guess the life of a next world champion? But what are the advice that you could share with everyone in terms of this critical 24 hours? So I suppose the first question that I've got for you tonight is you've got basically one last big meal to sort of the time when you start unwinding and you're going to you're going to bed. How did you approach it back in the days when you were racing in terms of like that last meal to like settling into bed and start to think about your race the next day? Was it sort of a routine that you had, or was it different each time?
It's a good question. The Last Supper,
Yep.
when you're sweating bullets. Normally, just joking. No, you're not. Firstly, I'd like to say welcome everyone. Thanks for taking time out of busy schedules. Yeah, I think our chat 2 months ago was on some things you could do to change your fitness between then and now. And obviously tonight, we're sort of in the 11th hour of our preparation leading up to Club Champs. So it's more about actionable ideas and tips for. But I want to widen the gap a little bit rather than the last 24 hours. I think
Mm.
the last week's important. So,
Hmm.
um, hopefully everyone's training well. You've probably got one more big weekend of training. This weekend, I know I used to train quite normally right up until the Sunday, the week before a race. So,
Hmm.
um, and the reason I want to widen that time frame and discuss that is because I know you've got a question later on about sort of mental strategies,
Mm.
and that sort of needs to start a little earlier than the day before. So hopefully this weekend and for the rest of this week, you've got some sessions, and typically by this point your sessions are getting a little more race specific. So maybe this Saturday you've got like a brick session, as they call it, a harder bike with some race pace efforts, and then a run off the bike at your sort of goal race pace. That's a session where you typically test your race nutrition, but it's also a great session to visualize. I mean, if you are going to do a brick session, I think you want to set up a little mock transition and run through things almost a dress rehearsal of the race. I think that's particularly valid for people who are newer to the sport or perhaps racing for the first time. If you're more experienced, I know certainly as my career progressed, my brick sessions, the transitions got a little lazy because I'd raced 1,000 times and you're very well versed at it. But, this Saturday or this Sunday represents a good opportunity, and probably the last opportunity to do a really well thought out race simulation. And that's a great place to visualize being in the race. Some of your swim session this week, you can visualize the race, what it's going to feel like on the race start, when the gun goes off. Hopefully some of your sessions this week will mimic sort of the swim discipline in the race, where you get out quick and then settle into your more steady state pace. So I always feel, you really want to fine tune your mental practice in the last couple of weeks leading up to the race as well. As you move through this weekend into next Monday and next week, I think it's important to realize that there is no training that you are going to do next week that will make you any fitter for next weekend. It's not the way fitness works. The adaptations work a little slower than that. Those key things that make us a better athlete, better endurance, better strength, better speed. And the way we get those gains happens over the weeks and months leading up to a race. So in the last 7 days, your default mindset should be something around if in doubt, be conservative. A taper is about ridding your body of residual fatigue, feeling good physically and mentally. Not trying to squeeze in that one last key session that you think is going to make you fitter, because any really hard sessions you do next week, you won't reap the fitness rewards of for weeks after. So, next week's about freshening up, ridding your body of that accumulated fatigue that maybe has built up over the last few weeks. And there's no right or wrong taper. There's no one size fits all, I should say, with the taper. If you're someone who normally trains 30 hours a week, I would recommend not going. A good taper is not going to be zero training. Your body's used to moving, so it's going to be a percentage less, say anywhere from 20 to 50% less than your normal training load. If you're someone who's only training an hour a day normally, then your week next week might look much the same in terms of the total number of hours. What you might want to cap and monitor is the intensity. You don't want to do prolonged, sustained intervals. It's about firing your engine up and then shutting it down before you do any residual fatigue or cause any residual fatigue. So I used to have a rule in taper week that depending on what distance race I was doing, if it was a sprint distance, an Olympic, a half, or an Ironman, the efforts that I did in the last week were capped at that race intensity. So you wouldn't see me in Hawaii doing max sprint efforts or run-throughs down a Leahy Drive in race week. I would have done some pickups, but at my marathon, my goal marathon pace. So I think it's important that we keep our body moving, and there's a lot of evidence that suggests if you're used to training and you shut down and do nothing, that might not be the best scenario. In the end, each athlete arrives at a taper through a little bit of trial and error. What works for the individual? What worked for me was definitely coming off the volume quite a bit, freshening up, firing my heart and lungs up so they were going to operate at the similar intensity of what they were going to operate on the weekend, but in 30 or 45 or 60-second sort of increments, and then shut it down. So I might, for instance, go out and do a set of efforts on the bike on a Tuesday where I'm doing 60 or 90 seconds at my target race pace and not a beat per minute higher, right on that intensity level, and then just do it. I mean, if the goal is to ride 30K at a certain heart rate, doing it for 60 or 90 seconds should feel super comfortable. And then have a lot of rest and maybe do that 3 or 4 times just to get your heart and lungs operating at that level, prime them, so to speak, for the effort ahead. And also I think it's important neuromuscularly to keep the movement patterns going. Our body is an interesting thing that adapts, and it's so used to working a certain way. You just want it to move well in that last week. So again, taper week is, if in doubt, default to the mindset of less is more, less is better. Be conservative. You're not getting fitter in that week. You just want to feel good. So it's an opportunity to fine tune, but you don't want to overdo it and have any residual fatigue from any of those sessions from Monday on in your legs come the race on the weekend. So that's what I'd say about the taper. As far as the diet goes, and I'm getting to your question, Tom, about the meal at 24 hours before.
And maybe we can. Well, I guess the meal, Craig, is we had a session with Scott from Fueling about carb loading, so we will share the link soon, and people can, I guess, review what Scott recommended. But more, I think what I was getting to is, like, how do you unwind and sort of get your mind to, or how did you used to do it to get your mind to rest and try to, I know it's not always it's easy to say to try to get some sleep, but it's not always the case for most of us. But like, was there any kind of ways for you to approach it in that, whether that was a world championship or just even a local race, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. There was, and firstly, Scott's an expert in nutrition, so he would have had some really good actionable ideas about what to do. So I'll talk about a little bit what I did later, but I'll answer that first question first. I didn't change too much. With experience, I learned not to change too much. I was able to unwind by hanging out with my family, listening to music. I got a lot of confidence from, in race week, feeling that I used to read through my training diary. I wasn't a superstitious person, but that was a ritual that sort of my wife shared with me early in my career. Well, she suggested, actually, she didn't share it with me. She said, I think with your personality, it would help you to read through your training journal. And I mean, she knew I was a hard trainer, so she knew I would get a lot of confidence from that. So I think we've all got to default to what are the things that A, give us confidence, but B, help us relax. As far as the sleeping piece goes, yeah, I think it's normal. I mean, there were nights I would toss and turn all night. I mean, I remember my first World Championship win. I actually didn't sleep the night before the race. It was in Florida, so it was a 12-hour time difference. I'd flown over a week in advance, so I thought long enough to get over the jet lag. But because I was so worried about the lack of sleep, I researched beforehand ahead of time, and there's quite a lot of research online these days, and the US Marines and the US military do a lot of research around sleep deprivation and how your body operates. And I found a ton of articles that said, after even 48 hours of no sleep, your body can still hit its VO2 max and its physiological potential. You've just got to make sure that you don't let it affect you mentally, and you don't get up on race morning and think, oh, I haven't slept, this is a major problem. You just got to get on with things. You just got to get down there, do a good warm up, wake yourself up. Once your heart rate's up and going, you'll be fine. What you may find is that after the race, you just crash because you're so tired. And that's what used to happen to me often. I would end up sleeping for 10 hours the night after something. Not an Ironman. Usually I couldn't sleep after an Ironman, but a lot of other shorter races. So I think the first thing is to understand that if you don't get a good night's sleep, a normal night's sleep, what you consider a normal night's sleep the night before the race, don't worry about it.
It's
Even
common.
if you're,
Let's put it that way. It's like most of us go through that.
very, very common, even 2 restless nights. So one thing I used to do was try and get some sleep in the bank early in the week. I would try and, have a couple early nights the weekend before, and try and be smart. I mean, you've got to fit these things in around normal life and kids and work. But yeah, I tried to make an extra effort early in race week to get a few good sleeps banked, so the physiological piece, I understood clearly that it didn't matter if I had 2 restless nights. It wouldn't impact my performance so long as I didn't mentally let it impact. Because of course the mind controls the body. So it's again, and we'll talk about that later. I know you've got some questions about mental strategies. In the end, a positive mindset. And you hear people talk about it all the time. You've got to be positive. You've got to be positive. What does that mean, and why is it important? Well, it means that hopefully with a lot of practice, you can get to a place, not just with sport, but with anything, where whatever happens, you can see some positives, or the glass full rather than half empty. You can see a way forward. And that's important because the way we think releases chemicals, and those chemicals impact the way we feel and then the way we act. And if we are very negative, or if we walk down to the race start thinking I've had a terrible night's sleep, even though I've just spoken about the fact that physiologically it won't have any impact if you can put it out of your mind. But if it is right in the front of your mind, and you will release negative chemicals that will definitely impact your performance. So, a positive mindset is very important. It's something that I think as athletes.
He's here. No, I'm not on camera. That's just here. You need to.
Wait. We've got someone that has not muted himself.
Yeah, he's muted now. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just understanding the impact that the way you think has on, and basically not just race morning or the night before, all of next week. If things don't go to plan, you have something happens with your bike and you've got to race it off to the bike shop at the last minute, or you get delayed leaving Sydney on the drive up, or wherever you're coming from. In the end, you've just got to roll with all of those things.
Don't let it get to you, basically, is the sort of the motto.
I think that's the take-home message, because what I learned through 25 years of racing and speaking to different sports psychologists and a lot of reading is that in the end, if we can clear our mind and almost get out of our own way, if we're physically in shape and be positive, you'll get the performance that you deserve. So, it's important to just put any challenges or roadblocks out of your mind. If you can, just deal with them and get on with it. So, but as far as the eating went, I mean, I never had a plan around I have to eat X amount of calories or carbohydrates per day. I was very much guided by my appetite, and in taper week, because I was training less, I would often just feel like eating less. I certainly made sure to eat. I didn't change too much the things I would normally eat. No, I think I'm lucky my wife's a great cook. We were always very particular. Well, not particular. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I was perfect. I used to love ice cream and chocolate and a whole lot of other things. But I ate pretty sensibly, I think. 3 meals a day. I'd supplement between meals with protein shakes. But yeah, maybe the intake in race week was a little lower than normal because I just wasn't training as much. I wasn't as hungry. In the end, if I was super hungry and not training a lot, I would eat. If I was hungry, I would eat because that's my body telling me it needs something or it wants something. You know, and for me, eating was all about. To be honest, I couldn't have cared less how I looked. I wanted to go fast. I wanted to be strong. So that's why, for me, eating is fueling. It's putting the fuel in my body that I needed to get the performance that I wanted. So over the weeks and months of training, your body uses different fuels, and you teach it to use carbohydrates. Well, it always wants to use carbohydrates at high intensity. Hopefully, with some of your zone 2 training, you've taught it to use and mobilize some fats, as you know. So hopefully, burning fat can contribute to part of your energy requirements as well. But yeah, I certainly didn't agonize or worry about every little thing in terms of diet. If I felt hungry, I'd eat. If I didn't, one thing I made sure that I was super disciplined was with just making sure the hydration was where it should be. I didn't overdo it or underdo it. I didn't change too much in race week, and even I finally got to the 24 hours before, which was your question.
Yeah. And we're gonna get moving to the day of, actually, in a bit.
Yep. I'll run through the day before quickly. I would wake up, probably have a cup of coffee. Love coffee. It's part of my daily routine. Usually I would go out and I would always swim, bike, run, the 3 disciplines the day before the race. But again, there's no fitness gains there. It's just to feel good. It's what my body's used to. I'd probably used to run about 15 minutes. I limited it at 15 minutes. Just make sure I do it in my race shoes, make sure the elastic laces were the right tension. I might do 3 or 4 30-second pickups right at my target race pace, not max strides, not sprints, just that slight pickups. Come back, then I'd either go for a bike ride straight away or have breakfast. If I went for a bike ride, it'd usually be, again, 30 to 40 minutes. Just make sure the gears, testing, making sure the gears are working, keep the legs moving, get some blood circulating, quite low intensity. Then I might do a couple of 45 or 60 seconds just down on the bars, again, right at race power or race heart rate. Good cadence just to feel good. Come home, have breakfast, which could be a normal breakfast for me, oatmeal or porridge. Could be avocado on toast or poached eggs, avocado on toast. Probably maybe another cup of coffee. Make sure I'm hydrating as well. So I'm usually hydrating the whole day, the day before. So electrolyte, not just water, mainly electrolyte actually, but a little bit of water as well, mixing it in. And then usually have a swim in the afternoon. Again, just 5 to 10 minutes. Just roll the arms over, make sure the wetsuit's good. Or sometimes I wouldn't even swim in the wetty because I wouldn't want to get it wet the day before. Just in the hotel pool, something like that. Roll the arms over. But lunch that day might have been, again, just normal sandwich, chicken or turkey and avocado, just normal sandwich. Dinner would be usually pasta with some sort of protein in it, either chicken or bolognese sometimes. Dessert, I'd always have dessert. So yeah, again, nothing there, but make sure the hydration's on point. And one thing I'd always do the day before the race too is, in a lot of big races, you've got to rack your bike the day before. And if I had to do that, I would obviously do that and drop your run gear in, but I'd do a walkthrough of transition as well, just to make sure I know where the swim exit is.
Yeah, we're going to talk about transition in a second. I guess that takes me to the next day. So this year the guys, you would have seen obviously the update on the race start, which is 9 a.m. This year. So we listened to the feedback of last year being 7. That was a bit too early and too cold for some of you. So 9 a.m. So if you take that in consideration, Craig, what time would you recommend waking up? I was amazed. I think a few months ago I was in Canberra for Challenge Canberra, inaugural Challenge Canberra, and I was talking to Daniel Bakkegaard that came, Danish triathlete that came over to compete, and he was actually, I think we had a 6:30 start that day, and he was waking up at least at like 2:30 a.m. To start his day, and that kind of stuck with me because I was like, wow, this guy is basically, of course, it is an half Ironman, so a bit of a longer distance and probably a bit more fuel in the morning, but we're talking 3 to 4 hours before the race. Is that something that you used to do when you were racing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Daniel's he's a super nice guy. He's also one of the best in the world right now. So he would have had some really good insights. But yeah, absolutely. I think you need, for the longer races, more of a breakfast for sure. Look, our body can store enough carbohydrates for 2 hours. But again, a 9 o'clock start, I would definitely be having breakfast, and I would have it at least 3 to 3.5 hours before. Yeah.
Wow,
so that was my thing too. So races that started at 6:30 in the morning, I'd be getting up at 3:30 as well. I think you've got to give your digestive system enough of a chance to clear a lot of it from your stomach. I mean, you don't want to be starting the swim. You don't want the gun to be going off, I think, with a full stomach. So, and again, I mean, my diet changed early in my career when I was doing a lot of short course, and I raced short course for the first 10 or 15 years of my career. If it was a particularly high intensity race like the Formula One series we used to do, the Accenture series or St. George, I might not eat anything. I might just have a gel, because those super, super high intensity, like 300-meter swim, 7K bike, 2K run, they're just lactic acid. They're lactic acid baths. Yeah, that's what. And so you are actually using almost your anaerobic system and all the fuel stores there. So you wouldn't want to feel sick. So, but if it was a sprint distance or an Olympic distance or even a half, I'd have something in it. Usually, I mean, for an Olympic distance, I'd usually have a slice or two of honey on toast. That's what I'd have in a cup of coffee.
So 9 a.m. start. We're talking 9 a.m. start. So let's say if you were to compete with us next week, you probably get up like you 5 o'clock, 5:30 at the latest. That would be your recommendation, and then straight into breakfast. Is that?
I would probably get up at 5:30, having my first slice of toast at 5:45 and a coffee, and then give that about half an hour to settle, and then maybe if you still feel hungry, have another. Probably have another slice of toast, or I've had oatmeal on race morning as well. Obviously not as big a serving, but yeah, I'd normally eat probably 8 or 10 mouthfuls 3.5 hours before, and then come back 30 minutes later and maybe heat it up again and have a bit more. So it's just a little bit, give your digestive system a chance to clear some of it, and then put a bit more in. And then I would get down to the race venue, and that's why I think a warm-up's important. I mean, it's going to be important because of the temperature, I think. But also, if you go for a light jog or do something in the morning, it just gets blood circulating. And if it's very low intensity, I think it enhances digestion as well. So I used to go for a 15-minute, sometimes a 20-minute walk jog. So sometimes after I'd got to transition and made sure the bike was set up, sometimes before I'd even head down, if I was still at my accommodation, I'd head out and just jog around. And when you're exercising and operating at a very high intensity, all your blood volume is getting shunted past your GI tract. It's carrying oxygen to working muscles where it's needed. But when you're exercising at a lower intensity, your oxygen requirements are not super high, so there's enough blood there to perfuse your gut and absorb. So that's why I'd go for a light walk or an easy jog, because I think it used to get a bit of blood going around the body and help with digestion and gastric clearing. Then I would head down. So I'd have a coffee and a couple of slices of toast. Or my advice to anyone listening would be, whatever you have had before your really hard race simulations or your brick sessions, or if you've had a hard 2-hour bike ride or a hard track session, whatever you've eaten before that and the time frame before is probably a good indication. I mean, if you're going to the track to knock out some 400s or 800s or miles or whatever, you wouldn't eat half an hour before heading down. So I think 3 hours is a good time frame. Gives enough chance to clear, and then if you get peckish, you can just take a mouthful of gel. I always have one or two emergency gels. I'd have emergency gels there just in case.
Yeah. So then it gets us to basically transition opens, and I'm probably the worst person in this world to give any recommendation to anyone because I tend to always be late, and not only that, tend to spend about an hour in there and get lost. So I'd love some guidance from you on how much time how much time before the race should you be in transition, and how much time do you really need to spend in transition? Because sometimes, you can run over your gears a billion times and then you're not even nowhere near the start when the gun is about to go off. You can really get lost out there, and I think I'm one of those. But I've seen a lot of people just keep looking at their stuff and over, and you're just wasting energy and time, and sort of you're getting worried for no reason. Is there sort of a time frame that you set yourself? If transition opens at 7, I've got to be there out of there at 7:15, 7:20. Well, what did you used to do in that regard?
Yeah, I used to have a bit of a time frame. I think firstly, it's good to be intentional and have a mental checklist of the things you need to do, and just get down there and do them. Just check them off. Walk in. If you're the person, I mean, I used to walk in. We'd have bracked usually the day before. I'd
Yep.
bring my helmet and bike shoes down with me on race morning. So the first thing I'd do is walk in, and I'd be like a pack horse with all my nutrition and drink bottles. So I'd put the nutrition on the bike, drink bottles, gels. I'd clip the shoes in. I would put the bike in the gear I wanted it to be in when I ran out of transition. So if it's a flat road straight out of transition, you might be in the big chainring halfway down the cassette.
Yeah.
So make sure shoes are on, helmet set up, bike's in the right gear, and then just go straight to the run gear. Shoes laid out. If it's an Ironman, socks laid out, sunglasses, visor, nutrition and fuel belt. Check, 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 check. And then usually I was out of there. I would grab my wetsuit and walk down somewhere near the swim start, take my bag over to the gear drop. I think, like a lot of things, there's no right or wrong answer, but this is where a good dose of self-awareness comes in. I mean, I raced athletes who were, they could get paralyzed with stress. So if you know that's you, if you know that you're kind of a nervous person and you're anxious, give yourself plenty of time. It's about time management and good planning. The night before, have everything laid out before you go to bed. That's one thing I used to do the day before as well. Lay everything out. It's all there ready. Wake up, throw my toast in, turn the coffee on, and while that's cooking, go throw my race suit on, get my clothes on. It's all laid out, good to go. If you know you're the kind of person who gets stressed out, if the porta potty queue's huge or the queue to get into transitions long and that starts bothering you, then get down there a bit earlier. I used to have other people I'd race against who were just really laid back and nothing would bother them. So the stress, if that would happen to them, it wouldn't impact their performance in a negative way. So I think it's about understanding who you are, and if you are a stressful kind of person, then give yourself more time. You don't want to undermine your race and all the training you've done because you weren't well planned and well thought out the day before, and you just didn't give yourself an extra 10 or 15 minutes. I mean,
that could make the difference, really. A break like that extra 10 or 15 can really set up you there right or wrong in that sense.
100%. And you know what? If you've gone to all this effort to train and driven up there and organised accommodation, and why not give yourself the extra 10 or 15 minutes? I mean, it's probably better to have that up your sleeve, and especially again if you're the kind of person who, you can be as fit as you like, but if again you start producing the wrong chemicals mentally, it has a physiological and a physical impact on your race. So just be well planned, well thought out, and I think that doesn't hurt to be a bit earlier. Hang out with the other athletes, chat away, put some music on. Even if you get out of there super quick, great. Throw your AirPods in and go down to the race start and have a good warm up. Get the wetsuit on, maybe do a dry land warm up. But yeah, that was pretty much what I just
perfect.
No,
that's perfect. I saw Robin put a hand up. We will have questions at the Q&A at the end, so if you can please hold for questions. I'm just going to break up the session quickly, Craig, with some the quick fire questions for you. Warm up swim or no warm up swim? Quick. Always warm up swim.
That's not a quick answer. If you've got if you've got a good wetsuit and you got someone there with a towel. If you dive in the water and like the water temp's what's the water temp up there going to be, Tom?
20. Over 20. It should be over 20. Yep.
Okay, so even if the ambient temperature is 13 or 14, but there's no wind, definitely a warm-up swim. If it's windy, I would still do a warm-up swim, but I'd make sure I had a pair of shoes parked on the side there with some socks to throw on when I got out of the water, maybe a beanie to throw on my head and some gloves. But yeah, I'd be doing a warm-up swim.
Okay.
Yes.
Socks or no socks for 8K run or 4K if you're doing the shorter course in Foster?
I would never wear socks for anything under a marathon.
Okay.
But again, it depends on the shoe brand and if you get blisters and if you just, I think putting socks on for an 8K run, giving up 15 seconds to do that, I wouldn't be giving up. I would be running, but I was trying to win the races. So
Yeah.
be comfortable,
Yeah.
and don't get blisters.
Bottle or no bottle on the bike? So you've got 27, 28K on the bike. Does that really require to have a bottle or no bottle?
Yeah, no, I would have a bottle, but I probably wouldn't have a big one. I'd probably just have a 500 ml one.
Yep.
And I'd have some electrolyte in there. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Smile at the photographer or all business, no smile when the photographers are.
Oh, you can give them a cheeky wink and a smile. I would. Why not?
Yep.
You want your photo to look good.
Yeah, I agree. Wetsuit gel in the wetsuit or in your hand when you're running? In your tri-suit, sorry. In your tri-suit. Do you hold it as in when even before using it to sort of like mimic, I guess, the running motion, or you just sort of keep it into your tri-suit pocket until you're about to take the gel?
I would always just have it with my shoes.
Oh, okay.
I'd have it with my shoes in T2. So yeah, I would run in, shoes on. I'd have my visor, sunglasses, and gel all together, and I'd just grab it and run out of there.
And you just out of there. And then last one, Mark Allen or Dave Scott? That's a bit of a cheeky one, but
no, that's not a short answer. I like both of them. They're good mates. So.
I figured you would say that. So no, all good. So now we win the race. So we're in the middle of the race, and let's take, I guess, example A where you get maybe kicked in the face or kicked in the stomach by a competitor. And you can't blame that person. It's just you're swimming or you're just hitting the boy out there or whatever happens, and you sort of like find yourself in a bit of a difficult scenario where you're like, oh, this is not good. I don't want to be here. What are the thoughts that you sort of like gather to help yourself thinking, what, I need to finish this race. This is important for my club, for myself. I need to carry on. Are there any sort of like mental tips that you can give to people that may experience, or you could be a mechanical on the bike, so you sort of have a flat tire, or you drop your chain, whatever it might be. How do you sort of like switch back on to be still in this?
Yeah, just stay positive. In the moment, it might feel all-consuming and awful, but the sun's still going to come up tomorrow, the day after, and it'll be a memory and it'll be a learning experience. I mean, every race, good or bad, is a learning experience. Even the races you win and you don't have mechanicals or anything, you learn things from them about what you did in your lead up that helped you have that performance. So every race is an opportunity for that, and embrace it. It's part of the challenge. Very few races go absolutely to script, but I can tell you that the satisfaction with a performance where maybe you had an awful week personally or an awful week at work, and you were able to come out and lay down a great performance for your club, or something bad happened to you in the warm-up or in the swim, just feel confident that you have the tools to address whatever challenges are thrown out. I mean, if it's a swim and you're an anxious person and you don't like that claustrophobic feeling, just roll onto your back, start doing breaststroke and move off to the side. You just need to relax. You need to relax. There's plenty of water safety out there. If open water swimming is your fear and you get hit in the swim, I would just slow down and relax and move out away from the pack. Move to the inside of the course or the outside of the course. So out of the main path of the traffic and the swimmers, and just gather yourself and get to it. There's no shame in taking a little mental break and resetting and going again. I mean, if that's what you need, I think sometimes we're our own worst enemies in terms of being critical of things. And, when you do the sport long enough, you understand that's part of the actual excitement and the challenge of it, is those moments where, I remember before the race thinking, I hope it's all smooth sailing. And sometimes that happens, not too often, and they're good days. But the days where a lot happens. There's still good days as well, actually. And, you'll be proud that you fought on and got through it. And, yeah, just be confident that you have the tools to face any challenge in the swim, the bike, the run, in the week leading up to it. And ask for help if you need it too.
Yeah, and knowing that you have your club mates that obviously hoping to see you at the finish line is a massive factor. I think you hit the nail on the head before saying, when you race for your club, I think there's a bit of a different approach that comes to it. You feel like you just don't want to let people down, and we all have our personal challenges when it comes to racing, but I think you are there for a good weekend for Foster at the end of the day, and you just want everyone to have a good time. So if you can push through the sort of tough moment, you'll enjoy, I guess, the after race.
Well, you're going to enjoy it. There's no losing when you do your best. There's no losing, and your club mates will rally round, and they'll be absolutely pumped that you fought on for them. I mean, there's no losing. You have a crash, or heaven forbid something happens, and you can continue on. You'll be the hero. You'll be the hero of your club. They'll totally respect the effort and the the willingness to overcome for the whole club. So yeah.
I love that. And on the flip side, I suppose, have you had days yourself when you felt, oh, we've got someone that's not muted. Sorry, if you could mute yourself, that would be awesome. Have you had days where you basically were not sure because the lead up to the race was not great, or something happened, whatever, but during the race you actually found yourself in a better position that you expected, and you sort of had to, I guess, reassess your situation and be like, you know what, today could be actually a good day. And how do you go about, I'm actually fitter than I thought I was. Can I just push an extra gear today? Like, how do you sort of have that mental stimulus to get you to maybe, that best finish you ever had, or that sort of like, best run leg or best swim or bike leg you ever had? Like, is there any sort of cues there on how to unlock, I guess, your sort of like next level if you're feeling good?
Just be positive. I mean, have the mindset that today's my day. Today is my day. I mean, it might not be. In the debrief down at the RSL club afterwards, when you're having a few beers, you might think, oh, today wasn't my day. But you know what? You've got to give yourself a chance on the start line for it to be your day. And if you haven't got a positive mindset, then it definitely won't be your day. So just stay out of your own way. Give yourself a chance. And you never know. Amazing things happen when you just hang in there. I mean, I had a lot of races. The 70.3 Worlds one year, I won a silver medal, and I shouldn't have raced. I was injured. The doctors had told me not to race. They wanted to give me this steroid medication. I'd hurt my back, but I couldn't take it. It was on the banned substance list. So they gave me a topical cream rather than the oral medication. I had a terrible skin reaction to it. I got dermatitis. Blew up. My whole body blew up. They had to put me on this tilt table every night to drain all the fluid out of. And the doctor said there's no way. And it was not just any race. It was a world championship race. And my skin was so itchy. I was sleeping in a bath every night of ice. I had to come off the anti-inflammatories 3 days before the race, and I couldn't sleep. I was so itchy, and I just had a guy tossing ice into the bath every hour to keep me cool, and I went and got a silver medal. And it was one of the most eye-opening performances of my career. And even though it was a second, it felt like a win, because I was just so proud of myself for giving I'd done so much training and invested so much in it. And sometimes you think to win a big race, everything has to be perfect. Really, your mind has to be perfect. The body will play catch up. If the mind's in a good place, I've seen so many athletes not at 100% fitness, but mentally in an unbelievable place, deliver Hall of Fame performances. And conversely, I've seen a lot of athletes physically in incredible shape, leaving you thinking, oh, this person, they're going to win by the length of the straight, only to finish 25th. The mind is the most important thing. Have that in a good place. And that's not to say you're going to get the outcome you want, but at least if you turn up happy, in a good place mentally, you give yourself a chance. So that would be my advice. Give yourself a chance.
Yeah, and if you see good power on the bike, or good sort of running pace, maybe don't overcommit, but if you're feeling good, like Craig said, and have the willingness to keep
for
pushing
it.
a bit harder,
Yeah.
go for it. Yeah. At the end of the day, that's the beauty of club champs. We can all agree is could be a tough course on the bike with a few hills, but if you're feeling like you're on the 10 out of 10 day, then why not giving a nudge and get the points for your club and yeah, celebrate at the end of the night. I like that. I think tonight you've spoken a lot about the mental attitude, and I think that resonating, with probably a lot of us here, that sometimes obviously the battle is mostly physical, but if you have that sort of willingness to look at the bright side, you can sort of get your best performances out there. So no, I love that. And before we go to conscious of the time, before we go to the floor for Q&As, just I guess the last question that I've got for you, Craig, is end of the race. So you've all finished now. You're waiting for your mate. So you're having maybe a drink, whatever, at the finish line. And I'm talking drink like a recovery drink, not alcoholic yet. Is there any sort of like tips that you can give us to recover faster? So you've obviously put your body through a really, sort of a grueling an hour plus or 2 hours, 3 hours. What were you doing straight after a race if it was a sort of short, like a 1:30 and 8K type race to sort of recover as fast as you can?
Yeah, I might go for a little jog or walk for a couple of K,
Okay.
and then go without the wetsuit, go and hop in the water, at least dip your legs in. So, or when you get back to where you're staying, if there's a pool, just swim a few laps, flush the lactic acid out of your body. Generally speaking, you cross the line, yeah, you've been sort of at threshold or close to threshold, so you might have a bit of lactic acid build up. So I think the best recovery is usually active recovery, very low intensity, low heart rate, but keep some blood circulating, because what does blood do? It carries oxygen. That's recovery. Oxygen to muscles is recovery. And also the muscle pump, flush all the lactic acid out of the muscle beds that's in there and get it back circulating through, so the conversion can start. Yeah, hydrate. But yeah, just easy walk or a spin, couple of laps in the hotel pool, ice bath, or go jump in the water. Yeah.
And you set up for a big night of dancing if you're a club champ at Foster there, because that's half the battle, isn't it? Like you want to have a good performance on the race course, but you want to be out there when the dance floor opens up after the award ceremony. So yeah,
Yep.
hope you guys all enjoy the questions and the answers from Craig. I'm just going to leave the floor to you all. So if you could say your name and unmute yourself. I think we had Robin as a first question, and you can use the raise your hand option on Teams to basically show us that you want to ask a question. So Robin, do you want to go first?
Hey, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Crowe. You pretty much did answer my questions throughout there. So thanks again, and thanks for sharing so much. Obviously Crowe's a pretty high level athlete, but to share his knowledge with beginners, and I'm sure that there's some pretty good athletes on this call as well. So yes, my questions were answered in that last section, and so thank you for that. And I'll see you at Club Champs.
Awesome.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Robin. Do we have someone else that wants to ask a question tonight? If you're not comfortable with asking the question verbally, you can also tap in the chat and we will answer it that way. That's totally fine. Whatever is easier for you, feel free to do so. Either the chat, or you can unmute yourself, tell us your name, maybe your club, where you're coming from, and then ask the question.
Craig, Malcolm Kofsky, how do you deal with humidity when you're up in racing, for example, in Cairns?
The humidity?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, fortunately, I think I might get you to mute, Malcolm, because I'm getting a bit of
Okay,
feedback.
I'll mute
Sorry.
that.
Yeah, thank you. I just heard myself talking to myself. It's nearly sent me crazy. Fortunately, I think even in the southern states, well, Sydney I know is very humid during summer. And obviously, I think the best way to prepare and acclimate is to train in those conditions. Of course, it's a fine balance. You don't want to overdo it because a lot of heat and heat plus humidity is very depleting. So training in those sorts of conditions day after day is very tough, which is often why we train early. But I think training through the summer in Sydney will help. If you can Google, there's a couple of protocols you can do, sauna and steam room protocols, which stimulate some of the physiological adaptations that you get training in those conditions, like increased plasma volume, a change in the composition of your sweat and the amount that you sweat. Your body adapts a little bit. So yeah, I would look at it. And then there's other things you can do too, like I've read people like doing runs and then coming home and hopping in a warm or a hot bath to keep their core body temperature up, hopping in a hot tub after a swim session, doing a bike trainer session, wearing more clothes than you would otherwise need. So I think there are things you can do, I think, to artificially increase your core body temperature and teach your body to deal with that. One of the main things you need to do when you actually get up there is hopefully be able to do a couple of sessions in the conditions. Again, that can be counterproductive if you get up too close to the race, because I talked about tapering half an hour ago and how you don't want to deplete yourself the week before a race. But I think understanding how different levels of heat and humidity impact our threshold are important. Typically, if it's very hot and humid, our threshold is lowered because our heart works harder in the heat and humidity. It's trying to cool our body. So it goes higher much quicker than normal. And that's why when you're in Kona or any race, it's one of the main reasons people don't get the outcome they're after. They get their pacing wrong and their nutrition wrong. And the pacing part of it is they're so used to seeing a certain power in their Ironman races or a pace. I think using pace as a indicator is fraught with danger, but you want to use something that measures effort rather than pace. So usually that's heart rate or power. But what's going to happen is you're going to see the numbers you normally see at lower speeds or lower powers. Your heart rate's going to be, for argument's sake, if you're used to seeing, let's say, you like to ride at 300 watts in your Ironman races in a cooler climate, in Kona, that take 5 or 8% off that straight away. And there's a mathematical equation you can use to convert between humidities, but hopefully you've been able to do a few test sessions in the heat and humidity so you can see what your threshold, how your threshold pace has changed in those conditions. So I think it's a two-part answer, Malcolm. Firstly, you want to try and prepare for those conditions in your training. That might be training in those conditions. It might be artificially stimulating those conditions, like a sauna protocol, a steam room protocol, hopping in a warm bath after a run to keep your core body temperature up. And the second part of the equation is understanding what that heat and humidity at that particular race is going to do to your threshold. And so pacing accordingly and fueling accordingly.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks.
That helps, yeah.
That was awesome. Thanks, Craig. Next question we've got from, we'll probably take only one or two more, try to close stop the call at 8 o'clock so you can all enjoy an evening with friends and family. Next question we had from Jimmy. Which I really love this question, and it sounds like Jimmy is from a club in New South Wales because he raced in Port Stephens last weekend, which for those of you that raced over there or were in Byron Bay last weekend, it was close to, I guess the worst conditions we've seen in a long time. How do you deal with bad weather on a race day mentally? Lots of rain, wind, and big swell. And how do you change your race tactics, Craig?
Well, again, it's about exposure. I used to go and train in bad weather. I used to go and swim in big swell all the time. Lucky I lived and trained near the beach, and 1 or 2 sessions a week would be in the open water, and we would never cancel a session just because the beach was closed. We'd actually go out and swim with the lifesavers, the clubbies. So, I just got used to training in bad weather. And and understanding the things you can do to mitigate the risk, like what kind of tire pressure do you need to run if it's wet. Obviously, you need to lower your tire pressures. So be aware of the things you can do from a technical perspective. Running shoes, what kind of soles have you got on them? Are they going to be slippery? But just embracing it too. I mean, my experience racing in bad weather was 80% of the people just don't want to be there. So that makes the job easier for the 20% who do. You just got to have again, find a positive, think how good the warm shower at the end of it's going to be, or I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I'm not going to say people love racing in the cold and wet. Some probably do. I'm not going to say people love racing in the heat and humidity. There are some who probably do. I think some people just prepare for those conditions mentally and physically. And in the end, they do. There is a little bit of an enjoyment in it, knowing that you've done something challenging and hard, and it hasn't been a bluebird day or a blue sky day. It's been tough, but yeah,
But it's basically controlling what you can control and let the weather gods sort of like be it, and then you can't obviously control that. So the tire pressure you can control, the sole of your shoes you can control. How do you approach the swim? Maybe talking to someone.
How do you rug up? What kind of clothes you wear?
Exactly.
Down to the warm up. What you lay out in transition. You might lay out arm warmers and a cycling vest.
Yeah.
I've done races where I laid out arm warmers, or I wore an undershirt, a compression undershirt under my race kit. In some races, so I did a race once. We swam in like 11-degree water. We probably shouldn't have, but people were allowed to wear neoprene caps, and also the only race I ever did where it was legal to wear neoprene booties. They were allowed to wear neoprene booties, and unfortunately they sold out at the expo, so I didn't get any. But yeah, it was a cold race, but I made sure. One thing I did do, actually, I did a bit of reading before, because we knew the race was going to be cold, and when it's that cold, you want to go and hop in the water for 5 or 8 minutes like an ice bath, because it does something to your blood vessels, either dilates and constricts, or so then when you hop in then I went in for about 5 or 8 minutes. I didn't swim. I just went and sat in the water with my wetsuit, and then I came out and put gloves, beanie on, had someone with a hot chocolate for me, and that was probably 20 minutes or half an hour before the race. And then I warmed up. I had the gloves and the beanie and everything on, shoes and socks, and actually when I hit the water in the race, I didn't get that initial shock that you sometimes get. I'd already almost shocked my body, if that makes sense. So that was something I did. But that race, I also laid out arm warmers, a vest from the bike. I had booty covers on, and it was a crazy race because it was an Ironman. By the time we hit the run, it was 41 degrees. I've never seen so many people pass out in a run course. It was so hot. But yeah, like you say, Tom, there are things you can do in terms of your equipment and what you wear to help deal with all sorts of conditions.
You should have a pretty good reading how the weather is going to be on the day, at least 24 to 48 hours. So you would think that you have enough time to really prepare yourself for the work, or I guess the best if it's a really good day weather-wise.
And conversely, if it's a hotter day than normal, have an extra bottle in transition to run out with at the start of T, to maybe wear one of those head cooling headbands. Just be as well planned and intentional as you can. And
No, perfect. We had other questions, but I'm just conscious of the time, so I think we're just going to leave it as that for tonight. But hopefully we can in 20 or next season, I guess, have another, and the season starts in July, so not too long to wait, but have another webinar with you and some other guests. I think we're going to try to keep that format going. It was great to have Scott the other day. It was great to have you, Craig. Thank you so much for the 2 sessions that you've done with us. A lot of really, really good tips, insight. I really learned a lot from you. So a big thank you. And obviously we'll share the recording, so if you want to pass on this to your friends, that you members of your club, we'll share the link around so you can do so. And looking forward to seeing all of you in Foster. So the 15th, so less than 10 days away now from race day, which is really exciting. I love this comment from Adam: the best and memorable races are the one that have the worst weather, because you probably remembered them the most,
Mm.
which is I like that. It is very true. So thanks for everyone for jumping on this session. Thanks, Craig, again for making the time for us for those 2 sessions leading up to Club Champs. And yeah, looking forward to seeing all of you out there. And have a good evening. See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.